Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Yes, that is indeed Dr. Nkemokeke. He joins us next here today. He's a former deputy governor for Anambra State. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well. So, what do we know? The media, of course, awash with the recent developments yesterday, plus the board appointments too. In fact, this appears as though the president is just pressing a reset button. Is that how you see it?
Yes. They say a good leader is one that's able to make decisions. A great leader is the one that manages the outcomes of those decisions. And I see Tinubu doing the right things. You can see the way things are moving. The markets, the stock market is growing. Lots of portfolio investment coming in. The hope is that will translate to foreign direct investment into the country.
Did you say lots of portfolio investment coming in already?
Yeah, no, within the country. People are investing already, yes, not portfolios. I mean, not
people are investing already?
Yes, things are happening.
Really?
The stock market is growing.
Okay.
You can see that. I mean, and of course, the appointment of service chiefs yesterday was really a great move. It represented the federal character that people are calling for. People want people to be represented. Of course, I don't personally believe that you must come from a particular region to serve your country. But the mindset of our people is that people need to be seen to come from different parts to represent your people.
And in fact, speaking about that, I mean, you know, a lot of these things also has a lot to do with perception in terms of whether or not they succeed or fail.
Correct.
So, and we have seen where Chief of Naval Staff, Rear Admiral Ogala, from Enugu State.
Yes.
How is this going to resonate? Is it going to affect the scheme of things in terms of what plays out on the security-wise?
Well, I think the mindset of people is what's first. People believe that it's an inclusive government. It's participatory. The question is how they succeed depends on them. I think I always say that how people do when they're given the mantle of leadership is up to them. What you do when you get into the office, try to change, try to leave your own legacy. It's up to you. Tinubu is doing that right away. You can see by the way things are moving in the right direction, the appointments. I was listening to the gentleman just that was before me, and he was saying something. You know, you watch people's reaction. It's a good leader. You pay attention to how people are feeling, and then you go in that direction. Now, if these service chiefs don't perform, you change them. You bring somebody else, and hopefully, if you keep on doing that, people realize that you're not there to stay. You're there to perform. If you don't perform, you leave. You step aside and let somebody else, you know...
in other words, these appointments, in fact, they should be the first people to know that if you don't perform, you'll be shown the door. Absolutely.
That's what leadership is all about. You can't just keep people if they're not doing the right things or doing the work the way you expect them to do it. You kick them out of the row, put somebody else in. That's what we expect.
But being a politician, I mean, one could also ask, could it also be that, yes, while he's doing all of this, he will also have an eye on the political side of things, saying, well, you know, I need to have a groundswell of people thinking we'll have to do the right things here, while I also need to survive politically. Those kind of considerations, does it come across? Does it come out at all? And if it does, how do they strike that kind of balance?
Well, you must, of course, like you said, he's a politician, but the point is achievement. We must need to, go in the right direction. You must do what's needed. If you don't see people performing, you change them. It's just simple. It's not...
How easy is that? You have been a former governor. How easy is it? Deputy governor, beg your pardon. How easy is it to change people when they are not performing?
You appointed them. You appointed them. Why? I mean, it's not... You didn't sign an agreement to keep them for your full term. If you put somebody in an office and that person is not doing what they're supposed to do, you remove them and you try somebody else. It's not... you weren't elected.
I'm just saying, as a politician,
it's easy.
How easy? Oh, it's easy.
But the last government, we just saw what transpired. If it was that easy, why did it happen?
No, hold on. I always say this. How people do in a position is when you're given a mantle of power, mantle of leadership. If I'm a governor, for instance, and I appoint somebody to be a commissioner for works, and the person is not performing.
Of which you were one?
No, I was a deputy governor, not a governor.
No, you were a commissioner.
Yes, I was once a commissioner. You remove that person. You're there to make people's lives better. You're there to move them from one stage of life to the next. If that person is not helping you in that direction, then you tell them, please, do you mind? Step aside. I need to put somebody else in your position.
Is it usually said that nicely? Don't they just wake up and say that, oh, I've been removed? I don't know how that usually works, do I? I always imagine the feelings of those who have been displaced and the suddenness with which they have to vacate office, you know, and how quickly these things happen. Even though right now the president has said that, you know, for those who will need to get confirmation from the National Assembly, they will be in acting capacity, pending when they get that final confirmation from the National Assembly. But let me take you up on the boards, which were also, they've not been reconstituted, but the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation has dissolved boards that are not included, I think, in Schedule, is it 13 of the Constitution or so?
Yes.
So those ones not affected. But I want to know, how effective are boards? Are they just ceremonial bodies that are just considered to compensate people who, you know, supported political parties in their quest to get power? Or are they really effective in helping ministries, departments, and parastatals achieve the core objective of government, which is to make life better for people?
I can't say that for every board, but I believe there are some boards that are actually there to help to make lives better for the people. I think people, if you look at the private sector, how the board of directors works, they're supposed to checkmate the MDs. And I believe that's what's supposed to happen in a parastate house. The boards are there to make sure that the chief executives are doing what they're supposed to do. Now, some of them could not be effective. Yes, it's possible. And that's where the president will now say, okay, it's time to dissolve this particular board and change them and bring in some new fresh blood, and hopefully things would move in the right direction. We have a system right now that people are not being held accountable for their actions or inaction, and it's not helping the country. We need to have people accountable, and I think that's the greatest challenge we have in this country. We're not any different from people from other countries, developed countries. It's just that our institutions are not strong. People commit all sorts of atrocities and get away with it. That needs to stop. That needs to be checkmated. People can't... We have to move the country forward. We have great people here. I mean, look at when you go to the United States, Nigerians are the ones that perform. Their median income is the highest, from what I understand, at least for people who are, immigrants, to the country. So why can't we move? Why can't we move forward in the same direction?
Big questions. Well, we've seen time and again, because you said you can't speak for every board.
Yes.
But the question is, can you say that effectiveness of most boards, from what we've seen of our history and the appointments that usually go into, how boards are constituted?
Like I said, it's the issue of accountability. I think people sometimes go into these boards expecting to go there to make money.
Indeed.
Yes.
Those are the expectations.
Yes. That mindset needs to change. But I believe it's a process. If the leader begins to do the right things, everybody begins to see he's moving in the right direction, things will begin to change.
It's a big if, because right now, I mean, what we know, as you've pointed out in the private sector, is that the boards are supposed to be a sort of check on the CEOs or the managing directors or the DGs or however it is that the nomenclature comes for the executive office for those who are heading a parastatal. Now, if that board, which is supposed to hold somebody accountable, is by itself not accountable, then where do we go to get remedy?
Good question. That's where the courts come in.
Courts?
The courts will come in. Because if you're caught in some form of corruption, you should be arrested, you should be tried, and you should be jailed. And if you begin to do that to one or two people, everybody begins to think, okay, we need to set up, we need to do what is right, we need to move this country forward. I think I like what's happening so far with the new administration, putting square pegs in square holes. Some of the decisions he's taken, it's what it's needed, like the fuel subsidy removal. Who was gaining? Who was making the money from those fuel subsidies? It was affecting more people. The masses were not getting the fuel they were needed. people who are just siphoning the country's resources. That's going to stop. The different exchange rates, that's been taken care of. That's what everybody wants to see.
This is, I mean, in recent times, we've seen the CBN governor being questioned, a former CBN governor, I should say now, because it's been suspended.
Yes.
It's been quizzed by the DSS. We've seen now former EFCC, is he been suspended indefinitely too? Yeah. He's also been suspended. These bodies have boards. Their boards are not being questioned because people will say that some of the decisions that these people took while in office that are being questioned now, which they're being questioned for by the DSS, are decisions that the boards of those institutions ought to have questioned them for. So again, I just want to ask you, you know, do you think that we should devolve, should I say devolve more power to the boards now, or do you think, I mean, our boards, have they been sleeping? Is it that they don't have, you know, sufficient will, or is it that they just think that they're just ceremonial, as the case might be?
I don't know. I understand where you're coming from. I think people are rather relaxed in a situation when they come into a board. They see the managing director doing or the CEO doing what's not right. Instead of speaking up, they look at it like, okay, if I speak up now, I might get removed. What happens to the CEO if he gets caught? Look at the people that have been arrested. How many have gone to trial and how many have been jailed? And you ask yourself, why raise the dust? Why do I complain? Why should I complain? Why do I make noise? Let me just sit and watch things. At least I'm in a board. So
what's the point of being in a board? And then the board, the agency which you preside over is assuming they have a lot of stealth and very untoward things happening there, and you're a member of the board. Did they really feel happy being in that kind of board?
I don't know. I can't speak for everyone, really, but I was listening to the gentleman before me, and he was talking about the corruption in the entire country, in every institution. We are Nigerians, and Nigerians seem to believe that I can get away with murder. I can try whatever I want to do. I can do things and get away with it. We need to have people held accountable. If we don't do that, we can't get there.
But, I think that this can also work sorry to interrupt you,
yes,
vice versa, because we also have a case in point where, will I say a DG or someone holding an executive position was in conflict with her board. It was her board who, it would seem, was trying to exert undue influence on the agency to get more than they actually, you know, were entitled to. This case came out with Yewande Sadiku, who was, I think, the then DG of NIPC or so.
Yes.
And she was probed and probed and probed, and it turned out there was actually nothing to... I mean, at the end of the day, the ICPC actually had to give her a letter of clearance, and they found nothing. So it could work either way. Yes. How do you think that we begin to change mindsets of people who are appointed? I mean, of course, all of the people who have been appointed so far, the congratulatory messages they're going to be getting from their state governments, from their local governments, from their village people, from, of course, yes, indeed.
Village.
Watch the papers, very sensible, and if you think I'm exaggerating.
That's what happens.
And their town unions, just look in the dailies in the forthcoming days, and you will understand. But how do you think, I mean, everyone's going to want to identify with them, which is a good thing. But then these identifications sometimes also comes with expectations.
Yes.
So how do you think that people can manage this? You have been in executive. You certainly know what it is I'm
Absolutely,
talking about.
I do.
How would you say you manage that? You know, trying to deliver on your task vis-a-vis also managing the expectations that your people have of you.
It's difficult. I know I was a deputy governor for 8 years, and I know how I felt where people believe that I should have buckets or cartons of cash that I can give away, which I didn't have. And somebody look at you like, what are you doing there then? If you don't bring that cash, then please step aside. Let somebody who can bring the cash come. I think it's all about sincerity of purpose. If you're sincere in your duty, do your work, and whatever happens, happens. If people don't feel good about you being in government and not sharing money, that's fine. I have a name to protect. That's what matters to me. So I do my job and do it the way it's supposed to be done, and that's it. If you feel like I'm supposed to hand out cash to you and I don't do that, no, so be it.
All right, let's bring in our colleagues in Lagos.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Well, one of the questions that comes to my own mind, primarily talking about all of these issues, Dr. KK, is the place of politics in all of these appointments and the effect it has on governance. You would recall that a number of investigations, replacements, and quizzing that happened in the previous administration, some people have labeled it as political witch hunts. And you are also saying here now that, look, if someone is not performing, no point, retaining the person in office. The person should be removed. But then there is also the conundrum of the person acting or not acting, yet removed or not removed for political considerations as opposed to the effect the person is having on the system. What are the things that Nigerians should pay attention to in this regard?
Supposing, let me give an example, how the president has appointed service chiefs from different zones, and one of them is not performing. You can always remove that person and replace him with somebody from the same, zone to maintain the federal character that you're trying to achieve. Yes, you have to play politics. It's all part of the business. You have to play politics. But there are people who are professionals that happen to be in politics. You must make sure you put square pegs in square holes. Don't bring a politician just because you want to bring a politician and the person has the capacity to bring in votes. Because you're trying to move the country forward. You're trying to move people from one level of development to the next level. So look for the right people, put them in there, and make sure they do their work. If the work is not achieved, you've ended up with nothing. If your projects are not, policies are not executed, what's the person there doing? I mean, what are they doing? They're not adding value to your administration, so you need to move them.
So, Dr. KK, besides...
I don't know if I've answered your question.
Well, yeah, I mean, significantly, the point that I was trying to make there is not just about the service chiefs. There are 1,484 at least of those ministries, departments, and agencies of the federal government. If there is any one of them that is not performing at any time, there could be accusation of political witch hunting and all of those things. So that's the point that I'm trying to make there, especially where it matters to the Nigerians and to small businesses the most.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with people being investigated if you're doing your work. I think, for instance, if a good minister, if you're doing your work, you can come out, you can do press conferences, tell people exactly what you're trying to achieve, the progress you've made in your own ministry. Everything is openness. How open are you? Are you open to criticism? Do you listen to advice? Are you doing inclusive government? Are you just sitting there dictating to your staff, this is the way things must be done? You must have meetings and have people at least listening, contributing to the process. It's a matter of having people working together. I listened to some of the special advisors the president has made and put together, and you see what he's trying to achieve. He's looking for good brains, people that can at least come up with good ideas and then be able to put them in place. I look at someone like Hadiza, who used to be an MD of MPA. I know she did well there. I've heard I've been in a program where she spoke, and you can listen to somebody who's very sound and knows our onions.
Yeah, Dr.
That's what we're expecting. People like that too.
Yeah, Dr. Okeke, besides
yes.
the need for results and professionalism within the boards and parastatals, I wonder if we're forgetting that this administration has submitted a list of 20 slots for special advisors, and about 10 or so have been filled, and the ministerial slots are waiting to be filled as well, and this is significantly shoring up the cost on governance. I recall at the onset, the beginning of the Buhari administration, there was an excitement about the possibility of reducing, the number of ministries such that the cost of governance can be reduced. And at the end, there was also talk about, the Steve Orosoye report and the commencement of implementation. Are we forgetting that, the cost of governance is increasing significantly and we are in austere times?
I do agree with you, but the point is you must allow the president to decide on how he intends to achieve his policies. If he thinks that he needs to reduce the number of ministries, I know he will do that. If he thinks the ministries are right now okay, he will continue. I get the point is, they say there are two ways to increase your profit, either increase your revenue or reduce your cost. If he begins to increase revenue, money begins to come in, and people are, taxes are being collected, royalties are being paid, and things begin to grow. Well, you might look at some of these things and say, okay, no problem, we're moving in the right direction. I do expect a lot from the president. If I look at what he did in Lagos, if that translates to the whole of the country, Nigeria, I think we're in for a good ride. I really expect that.
What do you expect in terms of labor government negotiations on the palliatives?
That will continue, that will go on. When we see, I'm afraid when we talk about palliatives, that people look at, handing out cash to people. I don't think that's the right move. Come up with programs, policies that would help. I listened to the Labour president talking about CNG, vehicles that use CNG. Yeah. I think that's a good idea. Let's see how we can reduce the cost of transportation on people who have to go to work every day. I heard the Para-State governor now has about a 3 or 4 day work week, which is good. I mean, you see that happen in the United States where people are followed. You don't have to go to work 5 days a week. You go to work 4.
But productivity is very important there.
No, yes, you can still achieve the same amount of work. You can still achieve the same amount.
Achieve it in 5 days working week and then want to do it in 3 days?
No, hold on. If people are given targets, if you're given a target...
In civil service, they can give them targets?
Why not? Why not? I mean, everything depends to be on the leader. When I was a deputy governor, my staff knew the way I worked. It's all simple. If you're doing the right things, your people will follow.
All right, it should be interesting. I'd like to see that bit play out. Give them targets in civil service in this country. I like that. Let's see. We should follow through with that one.
You should have a little more faith in the civil service, Chamberlain.
Well, if you're beating, you have to...
No, we are good people.
Yeah.
It's just that we're not being pushed. That's the problem. There's this laxity. Nobody cares. You must care.
So civil service, you have to be pushed. So governors, please listen. Well, Dr. Nkem Okeke is a former deputy governor for Anambra State. He's a vice chairman, BOT of APC Professionals Forum. Also being former commissioner for works and former senior lecturer, Department of Economics at Nnamdi Azikiwe University. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us.